Mark, we were asked a question yesterday from a listener who texted into the program. We didn't get to it, which is Social Security a Ponzi scheme? My answer is definitively no, but I think we should answer why, because it's a reasonable question. Was it Elon that called it a Ponzi scheme first?
I think he did.
Yeah. So a Ponzi scheme...
Well, lots of people have. He didn't come up with that.
Sure. So according to the SEC at investor.gov, a Ponzi scheme is an investment fraud that pays existing investors with funds collected from new investors. And I think that's probably the part that some have latched on to, which is Social Security payments are funded by other people paying into the program. The key element that is lacking from calling Social Security a Ponzi scheme would be somebody at the top who created it, orchestrated it, and is ripping everybody off below them. And that piece, I think we would know when was it created? 1930s, 1940s, Social Security Administration.
In the 36ish, yeah.
So I think we would know if the beneficiaries of the first president to create Social Security were scheming and taking a cut off the top, and there was a genuine fraud going on. What I think is more fair to describe the Social Security program is a system of income paid to individuals funded by those still working, and as designed did not account for changing demographics in our country, and so if ignored will completely implode on itself, but not by ill intent.
Let me give you the ornery libertarian answer to, is it a Ponzi scheme? Yeah,
okay.
It kind of is. It's not based on anything. It differs, though, from the criminal Ponzi scheme, and there was actually a guy, happens to be Italian, unfortunately, for those of us who are tainted or who feel tainted by that. But, of course, he was a clever Italian guy who wanted to pull one over on people, Italian-American, I should say. He ran a postage stamp or something, Ponzi scheme. This is from memory. There's a longer description on Wikipedia. And Madoff also ran a Ponzi scheme. You're paying new investors with money. You're paying old investors, with money from new investors. There's nothing generative. Remember we talked about generative versus speculative in one of the last segments? Well, the Ponzi scheme is the ultimate, example of that. In the technical sense, Social Security is not a Ponzi scheme. It's run by the government. They have the power to tax and the muscle to back it up. But in a more playful sense, it is a Ponzi scheme because there's nothing backing it up other than the government's promise to pay benefits, which have to come from somewhere, but yet they're not guaranteed. People like me who want to be mischievous libertarians might say, so who's to ensure that I get my Social Security, that I get back what I've paid in? You didn't invest it. You used it to pay out people, prior beneficiaries who have long since left this earth in some cases. So in that sense, it feels Ponzi-ish to me, and I don't know if the questioner kind of thinks it is a Ponzi scheme and just wanted to get us going on it. I think this comes down to where you stand ideologically, Mike.
Well, I think, again, to me, a Ponzi scheme has one compelling element that must exist to make it one, which is some fraudster orchestrating the whole thing and taking a cut off the top, and that's fundamentally not existing.
No, but in the more general and playful sense, it is kind of it is a bit of a scheme. My benefits are not backed by anything other than
nor do your benefits sit in a bank account for your benefit later on. They get commingled with everybody else's, and they sit there for eventual payout. But in that same sense, then I think there's a whole bunch of other things that could be considered in the same light.
I think you made the key. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No,
the key point is: are we going to fix it? We could argue until we're blue in the face about whether or not it's a Ponzi scheme. I say, yeah, kind of is. Maybe you say, no, not really, dummy, because it's backed by the government's promise to enforce the rules. But how we all agree that in 10 years, the trust fund goes to zero, and Congress has to do something, or everybody gets a 20% off the top haircut. And this is
approximately,
right.
Yeah,
I'm being a little glib here. So what are we going to do? Are we going to privatize part of this sucker like George W. Bush wanted to do? He got run out of town. He had already been reelected. He wasn't concerned, but that went over like a lead balloon. So that's off the table. The current administration doesn't want to touch it. If a Democrat succeeds the current regime, if we have a Democrat regime next, they ain't going to touch it. Maybe they will raise taxes. I don't know. But the solution here, I guess my point is going to be hard.
It's going to be a tough pill to swallow.
Distaste. Thank you.
And the longer you wait to fix it, the tougher it's going to be. The most recent news on Social Security, I think everybody has been getting a taste of, are the cuts to the Social Security Administration staff. And I don't well, I know why this is getting confused, because media organizations like to dramatize everything and make everything incredibly scary. None of the cuts that are being talked about are actual cuts to benefits. Likewise, Lutnick going out there and saying that, hey, retirees wouldn't really care if they missed a Social Security payment is crazy, and you shouldn't say that type of thing if you're a representative of the government. He said, look, only fraudsters would care if Social Security actually missed a payment to a beneficiary.
Yeah, he said, what did he say to the effect of, if my mother-in-law didn't get her benefit directly deposited, she wouldn't care. Yeah. She'll just assume it's going to show up next month. Have you ever not followed up when you didn't get a payment?
No, I would be quite concerned
ever in your life
if the government stopped paying me. So that was misguided. But here is the reality. This program is in crisis. Not calling it so is a lie. Doing things like passing the Social Security Fairness Act, which I am in favor of. It was, I think, a reasonable approach to make the program more fair, is cutting off your nose to spite your face. It is, not fixing any of the fundamental problems with it. And by the way, I think that's just as useless as cutting the staff at the Social Security Administration, because you're not going to fix the problems of funding at Social Security by cutting the employees.
Why do you think they're focused on that? Is it just the theater of it? Hey, we're trying to do something. We're going after Social Security.
I think it goes, if you want to take the best case view.
Yeah, I'm not going to assign bad motives.
It goes to, hey, we want to cut the cost of government across the board, and this is just one more administration to do that. If you want to take the most pessimistic view, which Senators Elizabeth Warren and Ron Wyden are lobbing at the administration, it's to say, hey, we want to make this administration so useless, inefficient, and problem-riddled by cutting the employees that sentiment will shift around it. And 10 years from now, you'll have a push by the American public to say, forget it, just privatize this thing, because the administration is so impossible to work with. And so we want it privatized and for a, for-profit entity to run the administration.
I don't get that explanation at all. Some have attributed very bad motives to the Trump administration's efforts to reduce staffing. They think they want to vandalize everything so as to break it, and then when people see it's broken, they'll conclude government can't do anything. Boy, that's a lot of levels to a conspiracy. So let me get this straight. First, we're going to break it. People are going to be mad it's broken. They're not going to blame the people who broke it. They're going to be mad at government generally, and we're all going to become libertarians overnight. That would be my dream American republic, personally. But it ain't going to happen, and that's a really roundabout way of doing it.
Sure is. Yeah, so look, I would be willing to bet that there are parts of the Social Security Administration that could be more efficiently run, privatized. I think there's a really healthy debate to be had as to whether or not Social Security Administration trust funds should be invested in a way that's different than they are today. I believe they're all sitting in U.S. Treasury funds.
To the extent that they're not paid out, that's the only option,
And so, other countries have said, hey, no, we're going to take our state's pension fund and invest it in certain industries. We're going to invest it in stock markets. And I think that's a reasonable debate to have. I'm not saying we should or shouldn't have it.
Well, that wasn't the privatization debate, though. The privatization debate allowed people the choice. It allowed people this. I'm talking about the George W. Bush scheme, and I don't mean scheme in the negative sense.
Sure.
I think it was laudable personally, but he said, give people control. You can name beneficiaries. Treat it sort of like an IRA, and you can invest a portion of it in something generative if you so choose. There was, of course, a lot of hue and cry from the left because that sort of undermines the general principle that everybody gets a minimum benefit. I always thought that those two things weren't exclusive, but that's what killed it 20 years ago.
So I think my conclusions, if you're a retiree out there that's worried about this, be worried about the state of Social Security, because a decade from now it's going to run out of money. I don't think I'd be immensely concerned about missing a Social Security payment because they're cutting a fifth of the staff. If you need to book an appointment, if you need to wait on hold, it's probably going to become more annoying, but I'm not worried about you not getting your Social Security payment.